items that had belonged to Vanessa's father, things that should rightfully have gone to his daughter. She also didn't mention that the house she planned to help them acquire was a rundown shack that had been abandoned for years, a place where Vanessa could suffer in privacy without anyone witnessing her misery. Aimcha agreed to the arrangement after what appeared to be careful consideration, though something about his demeanor suggested he understood more about the situation than he was letting on. He asked to meet Vanessa before finalizing the agreement, a request that Angela was happy to accommodate since she was confident that her stepdaughter's appearance and behavior would confirm all the negative things she had said about the girl. When Angela told Vanessa about the marriage proposal, the girl's reaction was everything she had hoped for and more. The shock, the horror, the desperate pleading, it all fed Angela's need for revenge in ways that years of daily cruelty had never quite satisfied. "You can't be serious," Vanessa whispered, her face pale with disbelief. "You can't make me marry a stranger, someone I've never even met." "I can and I will," Angela replied with satisfaction, enjoying the power she held over Vanessa's future. "You're 16 now, old enough to be married, and it's time you stop being a burden on this family. Mr. Aimcha is willing to take you despite your obvious flaws. You should be grateful that anyone would want you at all." The wedding was arranged quickly, before Vanessa could find any way to escape or anyone could interfere with Angela's plans. It would be a simple ceremony with minimal expense, just enough to make the union legal without wasting money on someone Angela considered unworthy of celebration. As the day approached, Angela savored every moment of Vanessa's distress, feeling finally that justice was being served for all the ways the girl had frustrated and challenged her over the years. Soon, Vanessa would be someone else's problem, trapped in a marriage that would likely bring her nothing but misery for the rest of her life. But Angela had no idea that the blind beggar she had chosen as her instrument of revenge was not what he appeared to be, and that her perfect plan was about to backfire in ways she could never have imagined. The wedding day arrived with a gray sky that seemed to mirror Vanessa's feelings about her future. She stood in her tiny closet, putting on the only decent dress she owned, a simple blue garment that had belonged to her mother and was now too small in some places and too loose in others after years of wear. Angela had refused to buy her anything new for the ceremony, claiming that it would be a waste of money on someone who wouldn't appreciate the gesture anyway. "Stop dawdling," Angela called from outside the closet door. "Your husband-to-be is waiting, and it's rude to keep him standing around all day. Though I suppose rudeness is just another one of her charming qualities he'll have to learn to live with." Vanessa's hands shook as she tried to fix her hair, using water and the small broken comb that was all she had for grooming. She had barely slept the night before, her mind racing with fear about what her life would become once she left this house. As terrible as her existence had been with Angela, at least it was familiar. The unknown that awaited her with Aimcha felt even more frightening than the cruelty she already knew. When she finally emerged from the closet, she found Aimcha waiting in the small living room, dressed in what appeared to be his best clothes, though they were still shabby by most standards. He stood perfectly still, his clouded eyes directed toward the sound of her footsteps, his walking stick held firmly in his right hand. Despite his apparent blindness, something about his posture suggested an alertness that Vanessa found oddly comforting. "Vanessa," he said when she approached, his voice gentler than she had expected. "You look lovely today." The compliment surprised her, especially since he couldn't actually see her appearance. Most people who interacted with Vanessa these days either ignored her completely or criticized something about her looks or behavior. To hear someone speak kindly to her, even if it was just politeness, felt like water to someone dying of thirst. "Thank you," she whispered, unsure how to respond to kindness after so many years without it. The ceremony itself was conducted by Father Michael at the small church, where Vanessa's father had been buried 5 years earlier. The priest looked uncomfortable throughout the proceedings, clearly troubled by the unusual circumstances of the marriage. He had tried to speak with Vanessa privately before the ceremony, asking if she was entering into the union willingly, but Angela had intercepted these attempts and assured him that her stepdaughter was simply nervous about her wedding day. "All brides have doubts," Angela had told the priest with false warmth. "Vanessa is just shy about expressing her feelings in front of others. She's actually quite excited about starting her new life." The lie made Vanessa feel sick, but she knew better than to contradict Angela in front of others. Any attempt to reveal the truth about her situation would only result in punishment later, and might not even be believed since Angela had spent years cultivating her reputation as a caring stepmother dealing with a difficult child. During the brief ceremony, Vanessa found herself studying Emeka's face, trying to understand what kind of man she was now bound to for life. His features were angular but not harsh, marked by what appeared to be years of hardship but not cruelty. When he spoke his vows, his voice was steady and serious, as if he understood the weight of the promises he was making. When it came time for Vanessa to speak her own vows, her voice was barely audible, the words catching in her throat as she struggled to say them. She was promising to love, honor, and obey a man she had just met, committing to a future she couldn't imagine and couldn't escape. The weight of that commitment felt crushing, like she was signing away the last remnants of her freedom. But when Aimcha took her hand for the ring ceremony, his touch was surprisingly gentle. His hands were calloused from hard work, but warm and steady, and he placed the simple gold band on her finger with care rather than the possessive roughness she had feared. For just a moment, Vanessa allowed herself to hope that maybe this stranger might not be as terrible as the life she was leaving behind. After the ceremony, there was no celebration, no reception, no gathering of family and friends to wish the new couple well. Angela had made it clear that she saw no reason to waste money on festivities for what she considered a business arrangement rather than a real marriage. Instead, Aimcha and Vanessa were expected to collect her few belongings and leave immediately for their new home. Vanessa's possessions fit easily into a single worn suitcase, the clothes Angela had deemed too shabby for Mira and Sandra to wear, a few books that had belonged to her father, and the small wooden animals he had carved for her during her childhood. Everything else that had meaning to her had been claimed by Angela over the years or sold to pay household expenses. As they prepared to leave, Angela made a show of giving Vanessa motherly advice, speaking loudly enough for any neighbors who might be listening to hear how caring and concerned she was about her stepdaughter's future. "Remember to be a good wife," Angela said, her voice dripping with false affection. "Listen to your husband, keep his house clean, and don't cause trouble the way you did here. Mr. Aimcha is being very generous in taking you on, so make sure you show proper gratitude." But when she hugged Vanessa goodbye, Angela whispered something different in her ear, her voice filled with venom rather than love. "Don't think this changes anything between us. You're still the worthless little orphan you always were. The only difference is that now you're someone else's problem." The word stung, but Vanessa had heard similar cruelty from Angela for so many years that she had developed a kind of immunity to it. What surprised her was the way Emeka's entire demeanor seemed to change when Angela spoke, his body tensing, as if he had heard the whispered insult despite standing several feet away. The house that Angela had arranged for them was indeed as bad as Vanessa had feared, a small, run-down structure on the outskirts of town that looked like it had been abandoned for years. The roof leaked in several places, the windows were cracked, and the front steps were so rotten they sagged under even Vanessa's slight weight. It was the kind of place where Angela expected Vanessa to live out her days in misery, forgotten by the world and trapped in poverty. But as soon as they were inside and the door was closed behind them, something remarkable happened. Aimcha set down his walking stick and turned to face Vanessa directly, and she realized with shock that his eyes were no longer clouded with blindness. They were clear, intelligent, and focused directly on her with an intensity that made her take a step backward. "Don't be afraid," he said, his voice now carrying an authority that hadn't been there during their interactions with Angela. "I know this must be confusing, but I need you to understand that everything you think you know about this situation is wrong." Vanessa stared at him in disbelief, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. "You're not blind," she whispered, the words feeling strange and impossible even as she spoke them. "No," Aimcha replied, moving with the confident grace of someone who could see perfectly well. "I'm not blind, I'm not a beggar, and I'm certainly not the desperate man your stepmother thinks she manipulated into marrying you." The small, shabby room around them seemed to shimmer and change as Aimcha spoke, though Vanessa couldn't understand how or why. The broken furniture appeared to repair itself, the cracked walls smoothed out, and warm light began to fill the space from sources she couldn't identify. Within moments, what had been a barely habitable shack had transformed into a comfortable, beautifully appointed room that looked nothing like the place they had entered. My real name is Aimcha Wellington, he continued, watching her reaction carefully. And I'm what most people would consider quite wealthy. I own several businesses, properties in multiple cities, and more money than I could spend in several lifetimes. The blind beggar act was just that, an act. Vanessa sank into a chair that definitely hadn't been there moments before, her legs suddenly too weak to support her. Nothing made sense anymore. The man she had been forced to marry wasn't who she thought he was. The house they were in seemed to be changing around them, and her entire understanding of her situation had been turned upside down in a matter of minutes. I don't understand, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Why would you pretend to be blind? Why would you agree to marry me if you didn't need to? What do you want from me? Aimcha sat down across from her, his expression serious but kind. I've been looking for something very specific, Vanessa. Something that money can't buy and power can't command. I've been searching for someone whose heart is genuine, whose kindness isn't calculated, whose character isn't corrupted by greed or ambition. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving her face. Do you know how many women have tried to win my attention over the years? Hundreds. Thousands, maybe. Beautiful women, educated women, women from wealthy families who could offer me political connections or business advantages. But every single one of them saw me as a prize to be won, a means to an end, a way to improve their own status or financial situation. Vanessa listened in stunned silence as Aimcha explained how he had grown tired of being pursued for his wealth rather than valued for himself. He had decided to find a different way to meet potential partners, a way that would reveal their true character rather than their ability to play social games. I've been traveling from town to town for the past 2 years, he said, presenting myself as a poor, disabled man in need of help or charity. It's amazing what people reveal about themselves when they think there's nothing to be gained from treating you well. Most people, he explained, had ignored him completely when they thought he was just a blind beggar. Others had been actively cruel, seeing his apparent disability as an opportunity to feel superior or to take advantage of someone they perceived as weak. A few had shown basic politeness, but even that had usually been motivated by social expectations rather than genuine concern. But Vanessa had been different. During the brief conversations they'd had before the wedding, she had treated him with respect and kindness, even though she believed he had nothing to offer her but hardship. She had spoken to him directly rather than talking about him to others, had answered his questions honestly, and had shown concern for his comfort despite her own obvious distress about the forced marriage. When your stepmother came to me with her proposal, Aimcha said, his voice taking on a harder edge, I realized I had found something even more valuable than what I was originally looking for. Here was someone who had been treated terribly for years, but had maintained her kindness and dignity despite having every reason to become bitter and cruel. He had agreed to the marriage not because he was desperate for a wife, but because he wanted to rescue Vanessa from Angela's abuse and give her the life she deserved. The shabby house and modest lifestyle that Angela had arranged were just another part of his disguise, temporary inconveniences that he could change whenever he chose to reveal his true identity. I know this is a lot to take in, Aimcha said gently, watching as Vanessa struggled to process everything he had told her. And I know you have no reason to trust me after everything you've been through. But I want you to understand that you're safe now. You're free from Angela's cruelty, and you never have to go back to that life if you don't want to. Vanessa looked around the transformed room, trying to make sense of what had happened to her in the space of a few hours. This morning, she had been a servant in her stepmother's house, trapped in a life of endless work and constant criticism. Now she was married to a man who claimed to be wealthy beyond imagination and who seemed to genuinely care about her well-being. Is this real? She asked, her voice filled with wonder and disbelief. Am I dreaming this? It's real, Aimcha assured her, standing up and extending his hand to her. Come, let me show you your new home. He led her through a door that opened onto rooms that definitely hadn't existed in the shack they had entered. There was a spacious kitchen with modern appliances and gleaming surfaces, a comfortable living room with soft furniture and warm lighting, and a bedroom that was larger than the entire closet where she had slept for the past 5 years. Everything was beautiful, comfortable, and designed with care for the person who would be living there. The colors were soft and welcoming, the furniture was sturdy but elegant, and there were small touches everywhere that showed thoughtfulness, fresh flowers in vases, books on shelves, soft blankets draped